We currently seem to be in that buffer zone where all the stores are starting to bring their Halloween stock forward, while you're traipsing around in sundresses and sandals. On the one hand, I don't really blame them. The temperature went down by about 5 to 10 degrees in the last half month. It's obviously time to break out everyone's favorite Spice Girl, pumpkin. We're gonna talk sundresses. I know, I just made the Lockhart jumpsuit and dress set by Helen's Closet. My original plan was to make the Lockhart dress to wear around the house, hence the blue and white striped fabric. The jumpsuit was an idea I ran with and wound up being stubborn in my stick-to-itness. I had planned to make the Reynolds dress, also by Helen's Closet, the showy one. 2 reasons for this. First, the Lockhart looked harder, so if I made it with the lighter fabric that was $4 per meter and it didn't work, then at least I had something to kick around the house in. It turned out way better than I expected, so that was a win. The Reynolds is a comparatively easy pattern, at least in theory. Less piecing, less shaping, less lining, etc. The relative simplicity of the pattern makes it a perfect way to highlight a fun fabric, and that's the second reason I made this matchup. My friend Ashley and I hit up Fabricland a few weeks back, and this was one of the results. We found a couple of really fun prints that were attractive and yet kinda outside the usual prints or colors we normally choose. Considering the amount of black and burgundy in my wardrobe, an aqua blue with brightly colored flowers is an outlier on the Mercol Clos bingo card. So what would be better than to make it a fun sundress? Don't worry, my mother is still criticizing this decision from the afterlife because I think these colors swing slightly more spring than summer, and if I was letting color analysis live rent-free in my head, this would probably bother me a lot more than it does. But those of you on Team Mum can feel your quiet vindication and I won't judge you. I traced and cut out the pattern and adjusted the bust back when I did the Lockhart dress. It is possible my fit will have changed slightly since then. If you're confused as to why I suggest watching the stupidly long Lockhart video, it goes into my newfound love and frustration with fit and adjustments. The nice thing about the Reynolds is it seems a little less fitted. And if need be, I can pinch out some excess at my sides and possibly take in a bit more at the bust darts. It's not as finicky construction-wise as the Lockhart's Princess seems. Let me tell you folks, making a dress I can slip over my head is going to be so much easier than having to line up seams to run perfectly straight across an invisible zipper. I may have ripped back one side of the zipper on the black jumpsuit about 3 times before I finally got it right. I will miss my huge pockets. Because the Reynolds can be made as a dress or a tank, you can tape or pin the skirt to the bodice piece and treat them as a single pattern. Convenient, but it does affect the pockets I can have. There's nowhere I'd be able to attach the top of the huge pockets for stability, so regular, ordinary side seam pockets it is. If I really need more pocket though, I could probably use a bit of leftover fabric and add a couple of patch pockets. There is a hack you can use for a different skirt that would give the ability to have ginormous pockets, and I did consider it. I may try it with a different fabric. At its bare bones, you make the tank version with a panel skirt gathered to it, rather like the March dress. I have a bunch of dresses in my personal queue, but it's such a simple sounding idea I may try it if I have nothing better to do with 3 to 5 meters of fabric. This was one of those rare days when I managed to get up early and had the main floor mostly to myself, so I spent some time cutting out fabric and enjoying the early morning light. The kittens were playing out in the sunroom, so that made things a lot easier. Technically I was still working on the Lockhart set, but it was a nice cool morning, so I took advantage of it. The nice thing about working with patterned fabric like this is you can definitely tell the difference between the right and wrong sides. This fabric also became really soft after washing. It's 80% polyester, 20% linen, and lost a lot of fuzz in the wash. What's left is rather soft and drapey and really pleasant to touch. A bit prone to fraying in places, but nice. I didn't get everything laid out 100% according to the diagram in the pattern, but I came close. Even had a little bit of fabric left over. That's fantastic because you never know when you're going to have to recut small things. For instance, I decided afterwards that I'd prefer the shoulder straps be adjustable, so I recut them from some of the scrap I had left over. What do you do with your fabric scraps? Do you pitch them out? Do you save them to turn into stuffing? Do you save as many large pieces as possible for other projects like stuffies or cat toys or market bags or patchwork? Let me know in the comments. While you're commenting and possibly liking and subscribing if you're not already, this video is 100% funded by my supporters. I have a great community of folks who keep me going. Some of them are on Patreon, and for those of you who don't feel like going to a separate website, they're channel memberships. I'm trying to keep my perks as similar as possible while still retaining the flavor of their different platforms. I try to bring everyone together in Discord. The program, not the state of being. I recently found out that if you're using your Apple iOS apps to contribute to your favorite creators, Apple takes a 30% cut. They're going to start applying this to the Patreon app in November, so if you use the Patreon app on your iPhone or iPad and you notice a price jump for many of the creators you support, that's probably why. I suggest using your home computer for any Patreon memberships or channel memberships or super chats, etc. Probably less expensive all around. The pattern, like most by Helen's Closet, is really quite straightforward. I actually went with interfacing the facing and straps this time, as I figure it will make more difference to the structure than the ability to keep me cool. These aren't the actual straps, by the way. I changed those out later so they could be adjustable. I don't know if it was all that apparent in the Lockhart video, but at some point in the process, the Reynolds Dress pieces and parts were lurking on the chair behind me in my sewing space. I'm not going to go over all the steps, but suffice to say you need to stay stitch your possibly stretchy areas first, then work on the darts and, strangely enough, iron your hemline, which gets squidged into place later on when you sew the pieces together. It looks like I'm doing things in a hodgepodge manner, but that's just the way the directions are written. Then I serged most of my edges in preparation for seaming. You can pink or use other methods of finishing your edges and seams as the need arises. If you're a French seam kind of sewist, prefer to fell or zigzag stitch, I'm not going to tell on you, or judge. You do you, boo. Seam up the two back pieces, then it's on to pockets and side seams. Basic side seam pockets. If you move your needle to either side of center when you understitch the pockets, be sure to move it back. Don't be forgetful like me. I sewed my side seams with a little too much negative ease. Thankfully it didn't cause any issues, but it's something to remember for the future. I finally found a way to keep my pins handy while I place my pattern pieces. I tend to either dig through my pin jars or just stick a small pile of pins on whatever it is I'm trying to cut out. No longer. There's a lot of miscellaneous china in the cupboards that I still need to go through, and there are a few odds and ends like pieces you'd find in a vanity set. This wee little tray didn't seem to go with anything else, so I pinched it for sewing. Someone asked why I don't just use a pin cushion, and I do use a pin cushion on occasion. I have a few of them, but I also have 2 young cats who are at that stage in their development where they'll put anything in their mouth if they can. This stage will probably last the entire rest of their lives. I try not to leave things like pin cushions unattended for them to pull pins out of and possibly swallow. I've taken to keeping my pins in sealed containers because we've had some very sociable arachnid activity. For those of you following along on the spider saga, I have repurposed the former pin cauldron and found the courage to retrieve and inspect the other 2 cauldrons in the set. They were strangely devoid of inhabitants, which tells me the spiders in this basement really like this area, the area where I spend most of my time. Fantastic. Apparently spiders like light and bugs. So much for spiders lurking in dark places. This area is extremely well lit because it's where I do the majority of my work. I use my softbox lights even when I'm sewing for fun because I appreciate the extra light. Apparently I'm not the only one. Like seriously, I have seen a spider like booking it across the wall while I sat there going, what? Also across the wall to the utility room, which is kind of disconcerting. Seriously, these guys are the size of like loonies and toonies. disconcerting. But I reclaimed my cauldrons and stuffed them full of citrusy scented potpourri. I read that spiders, as well as other pests, don't particularly like citrus, peppermint, lavender, or eucalyptus. I ventured into HomeSense for some smelly things. This was dangerous because they've just put out their seasonal collection of spooky decor. We currently seem to be in that buffer zone where all the stores are starting to bring their Halloween stock forward, while you're traipsing around in sundresses and sandals. On the one hand, I don't really blame them. The temperature went down by about 5 to 10 degrees in the last half month. It's obviously time to break out everyone's favorite Spice Girl, pumpkin. On the other hand, I walked into Costco yesterday and saw a Christmas tree display. Before you come at me in the comments, I generally have nothing against Christmas. It's a perfectly fine excuse to celebrate the solstice and eat a lot of turkey. It's just, at the time I'm recording this, it's the end of August. Christmas is like 4 months away. Though I have to admit, Michaels has been promoting Halloween-themed merchandise for most of the summer. I've been sitting on footage for about 2 or 3 months, confused as to when I should mention it, so we'll take a look at that in a bit. I didn't film in there because it was pretty crowded, but I may have wandered away with a few things. Potpourri, yes. Also lavender sachets for my desk and Notion drawers. Also some scented room spray. I'm using that cautiously because I don't know how it affects felines, and sprays can leave surface residue. I didn't find any peppermint, but that's probably because it's the wrong season for that. I probably shouldn't have come home with more mugs, but I did. I also found a fantastic tablecloth and some cute hand towels. Also a small display bowl, which makes a wonderful place for my dice. One of the people on my Discord was asking about the amount of dice folks had, and, well, these are my Shadowrun dice. My D&D dice are an entirely other collection, but when the dice aren't in their bag, they now have a home on the table. Michael's, right next door to our local HomeSense, is another matter. They've been going hardcore into Halloween this year, and I have no idea what to think about it. I'm that person who will remind you that Ministry was right, that every day is Halloween, but I'm not sure who the disco ball skulls are for, or the cantaloupe orange-colored anything. There's also been this trend towards skeleton figurines, and there was one that on first glance I thought was a skeleton sitting on the toilet reading a book, which I think ranks right up there as one of the most often cited ways that folks do not want to meet death. Honestly, there's been this whole mashup of romance and death thing that Michaels has been trying for the past couple of years that just does not do it for me. The fortune teller signage? Yes. Perfect. Amorous skeleton figurines? No. Though I have to say that with the bright melon-colored pop 60s inspired stuff earlier this summer, I guess it would work really well if you want a spooky drink cart by the pool. It would be a rather niche interest, but very achievable with one of those rolling carts you can get for storing your craft stuff. Still, kinda weird. Even for me. Kinda weird. They seem to have about 3 phases of decor that released at staggered intervals. First was Hippie Hollow, which appears to be the bright candy-colored disco ball stuff. Then Haunted Forest, which strikes me as the kind of Halloween decor that really appeals to those folks who want a white Christmas tree with white Christmas lights. Very light blue with white on white tones, somewhat reminiscent of Wedgwood blue jasperware. Finally, you have your Midnight Moon collection, which has some of the dark and gothy things I expect from a Halloween collection. Some of the things on my little aesthetic washstand of doom behind me apparently come from that collection. The website also lists a Hocus Pocus collection, which is apparently retooled classic Halloween bits and bobs, but I think most of that just got shuffled in with the Hippie Hollow stuff at the store near us. My thoughts on it? Eclectic and cluttered though they are, I tend to curate my spaces, and the bulk of the house requires buy-in from both the people in the household. So a lot of the cheesier Michaels decor isn't going to make it in our house, particularly at the prices their Ashland brand wants to charge. With HomeSense and Michaels being side by side, I couldn't help but compare the two. Michaels is primarily a craft store. Yes, you can get decor there, lighting, picture framing, florals and garlands, but it treats decoration as craft. I think the intention is that these are accent pieces you're going to trot out once or twice a year for a few weeks on the run up to Halloween, and then bury in a box in the utility room or the garage for the other 11 months of the year. I sometimes have to remind myself that there are normal people in the world who don't decorate like this year-round, like myself and Kayla from Alt Knots. On the flip side, if you're looking for spooky home decor you can enjoy year-round, HomeSense is the place to go because that's where you're going to find the Ouija-themed mugs, or Black Rabbit of Death woodcut throw that can keep you warm and toasty even when it's not October. Yes, this is the logical time of year when you're going to find spooky, scary stuff on shelves. It's just a matter of your intentions. It's the difference between decorating for lifestyle and decoration as a seasonal hobby, I guess. Anyhow, I know there's a lot less seams, but this dress isn't going to sew itself. I'll see you in the reveal. Because I'm making my straps adjustable, I can just sew the strips into place and attach the hardware later. Makes that step a little easier. I marked my seam allowances and placed my straps so they wouldn't get caught. Then I basted them in place on the right side. I then attached the rest of the hardware, but that step could easily have been saved until the end. Next was sewing the facing together and placing it right sides together with the bodice. Sew it in place and notch the edges. I found understitching frustrating, so I top stitched around the top edge of the bodice instead. Whatever gets the job done. Finally, on to finishing the hem. This dress has an oddly specific hem, but it works, so I'm not going to argue. So let's see what this thing looks like all put together. Had a fantastic day out. I'd like to thank my last-minute videographer, Ashley Main. We decided to get together on Labor Day since it was a holiday. We were going to go to Fabricland, but unfortunately it was closed, so Sorry, Ashley, you couldn't get your notions. I did drag her into HomeSense. Again, did not take any footage because it was kind of busy. Ashley, I don't think got anything, but I came back with a few more things. In fact, one of the mugs that I bought previously is now a very small set. So I'm going to be going through my other mugs to find out just what needs to leave the household, because I've got much better spooky mugs to deal with. So the questions that I ask myself that nobody else has asked, but I figure could use some answering. Do I like it? Can I alter it if need be? And how does it look compared to, say, the straight size version or mid, just sort of low plus size version? Yes, I really do like the dress. It is fantastically comfortable. I am sitting out here in an overcast, cool day and just feeling fantastic. The colors are almost obnoxiously bright, but I don't mind that. I mean, it means the husbeast isn't going to lose me in a crowd if we decide to go to the farmer's market. The dress is a little bit big. I had thought that it was actually going to turn out a little bit small. After I did the understitching on the pockets, I forgot to move the needle back to center, and so my seam allowances at the sides are about an inch, if not a little bit more than an inch. So I was expecting this thing to fit kind of tightly, and no, I actually have a good inch to 2 inches at each side that I could take out. The bust adjustment did fantastically. Everything looks like it's in the right place, at least on that side of things. So that's wonderful. My straps, I could stand to take some length out of the top strap. It's right now at probably its tightest setting, and even then it's a little loose. So that's something I might do a little farther down the line, is just take a little bit of length out of that strap. Not a big deal. I'll probably be wearing this with tops underneath it for the time being, at least until I can find my strapless bra. But it also does give a little bit of added protection to my shoulders. So as long as the top that I put underneath it is fairly cool, I should be good to go. It doesn't really go with a lot of my other stuff, but as I don't particularly plan on pairing it with many things, that's fine. It is easy to get around in. I can drive in it. I just have to keep an eye on the skirt to make sure that it's not doing the whole cliche stuck in the door, driving away with your skirt in the door thing. We have been having a bit of a hot spell, so I did get this finished just in time for that. It's going to make the next couple of weeks or so probably a whole lot easier, having a light dress like this to be able to lounge around in. It doesn't have a lining. It's just got the facing, so it's only one single layer, unlike the Lockhart dress, which is almost fully lined. We'll see how that works. I'll probably let you know how that's going a little bit farther down the line. Maybe we'll do an update of how things are working out. Could I alter it if need be? Yes. I didn't do any kind of French seams, so the side seams are just serged if I needed to take it in at the sides. Chances are pretty good, though. I'll wear it for the rest of the summer the way that it is, put it into storage for the winter time, and when we come back around to spring, see whether it can be taken in or if I just need to recut it. And if I just need to recut it, well, then that's what I'll do. If I have to recut it, then we'll see what other kind of adventures this fabric will go on, because that could be a really interesting challenge. And it's very possible that whatever I do with it, if I have enough fabric out of it, I'll just make something different. Who knows? We'll find out when the time comes. Does it look like the straight size version? Well, I don't look like a straight size person. I mean, I don't have the more angular body. I'm more rounded. So obviously there are going to be some differences, but I think it looks good. I don't know, you're going to have to tell me. I don't feel self-conscious wearing it the way that I would with something that was more form-fitting. And having the t-shirt on underneath just makes me feel like I've got like a long sweater or something going on over top of it. It's really quite comfortable. So taking a look at pictures and so on, I like how it looks. As I said, it is rather obnoxiously colorful, so it's very possible that I'm being dazzled. My eyes are just dazzled by the brilliance of this fabric. It is a very basic shift style sundress with very basic shaping, so it is flattering from that aspect. I do think that as I lose weight, it is probably going to look more like a tent unless I take it in. So it'll probably be good for this season, and then we'll see what it looks like on another iteration farther down the line. I think I'm going to head inside. It's starting to get noisy out here, and I've got a couple of shirt dresses that I have to get working. My dress form is over there. I'm wearing a dress that my mother made me when I was 18 years old. It's kind of creepy. There's no lights on over there. It looks like a very headless person is kind of hovering over by the television. Yes, I did this myself. Yes, it is creepy as all get out. My hair's not really curly, it's just confused. It's up in a bun for 90% of the time, so when I take it down, it thinks it still has to keep twisted. I think I confused one of the local wasps a little while ago, though, because he was like, "Ooh, I smell something nice," probably my hair, and I see flowers, so I'm going to investigate, and I was like, "No," and I just sort of off like a shot. I just vamoosed right out of there. I am not fond of these stinging critters, so if they wind up coming around here again, you're probably just going to see me just burst right out of the frame. I'm just like, gone. You ever get the feeling that your neighbors are just circling around, like they see the tripod and they're like, what's going on here?